start. So hi, we are George and Joy Ross. We're here to talk to you about this lovely section called In Sickness and in Health. And hopefully our story is something that can help inspire you. So just as Linda said, just a little bit about us. I actually am an executive over at CCLI. And my wife is the one who makes me awesome.
After the bells. I'm Joy, his better half. I'm completely blind, just to get that out there. If you haven't figured out that I am blind because I have a guide dog right at my feet. Everyone, this is Arabella. Arabella, you want to sit up? Can you guys all see her? Yes. Okay. She is my new guide dog. So I just graduated from guide dog school on February 24th. So we are a new team. I just retired. How many of you guys have seen us before? I can't see hands, so. Nobody. Okay, that's great. So you have. So has anyone ever seen me with my yellow lab, Antonia?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's retired and she worked with me for 9 years, and so it's been a journey just retiring her. Emotional for sure. But God gave me this beautiful angel, and her middle name is Faith because it has been a step of faith to believe that a new guide after 9 years, right? And I can trust my life with her, right?
Yeah.
She can be mine. So that's been a really step of faith. So Arabella, Faith, and we're doing amazing things already. But I am a wife, of course, and a mommy. We have 2 beautiful girls, Isabella and Georgiana. They are 12 and 15. Can't believe I'm saying that. We got married in Fort Worth in 2000. So, and then we came here and have been here ever since. Well, we did go back to Texas for a couple of years, then we came back. So, but where did we go now?
Yeah, so look, we're here to talk to you about, we're obviously in the marriage and family class. We're here to talk about the section of sickness and health. So I'm sure you guys have covered Genesis 2:24 at this point. So you're familiar with the scripture. We're only actually going to spend 2 days talking about one word in Genesis 2:24. So you all know scripture. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. We're going to talk about specifically the word become. What does that mean? What's that journey look like? Everyone's going to have a different story. This just happens to be ours, and how through this process we became one. So, Joy, you want to take it on? Okay, so you got to start with your joke.
Yes, okay. Our favorite part of our story, it's a blind joke, so you guys prepare yourself, you gotta laugh. Blind jokes are my favorite. So, okay, George and I, like I said, we met in Fort Worth. I was not really looking for a relationship at the time when we met. I hadn't really ever dated much before I met George. My sister was dating a guy at the time, and he told me, he's like, Joy, he goes, you gotta meet my boss. And I'm like, He's like, I really think, he's your type, and I think you guys would get along, and you have a lot in common. And he was like, I'll bring him to church Wednesday night. So I'm like, sure, okay, whatever. My parents are worship ministers, and my sisters, and I have 2 sisters, and we all sing, and we lead worship at that time. And so Wednesday night, we're going to church, and my sisters and I were singing on stage, and I'm supposed to this guy is supposed to be coming, to meet me, but I was hoping and praying he wasn't going to show up. How awkward is this? You guys, because he and I met on a blind date. Blind date at church. Isn't that kind of funny? So my sisters and I were singing on stage. Back then, I had a little bit of eyesight in one eye, just enough to see, if I was standing before you, back in 2000, I I would actually be able to see that there was movements maybe right here in the classroom, but I wouldn't be able to see faces, or I wouldn't be able to tell if you were a guy or a girl or anything like that. I might see blurs of colors, that sort of thing, but that was basically it. So my sisters were standing on stage singing, and the preacher comes up to say something, and then my sisters start whispering to me, he's here, and I'm like, oh no, he's here.
Wait, this is where she talks about me in past.
And then we're going, he's so handsome.
Past
He's
tense.
so still handsome. And they're like, oh, he's so your type. He's tall, dark, and handsome. He had a Texas tan. He was 20.
Man, it was a farmer's tan. It ended up.
He was 25 years old. Anyway, and so it's like, okay. So after we get off stage, my sister, whose boyfriend was there, she's like, you're coming to sit with us. And she drags me over to him. So literally, George and I met in the row, in the pew, at church, and when I got near him, he put out his hand and he said he was George, and I say, no, in hindsight, it was love at first touch. It was not ordained because we met, and it was immaculate in heaven, right? So it was pretty amazing, and I thought it was too good to be true, actually, because I was like, this guy who's so good looking, I was like, he's like some model guy, that's how good looking. He worked out every day. And I could see close enough when I got close to him, like, okay, he's cute. I'm like, he could have anyone he wanted. He doesn't really know what he's getting himself into, I don't think. I'm like, I had a prosthetic eye at that time in my right eye. I couldn't see much out of my left. I always said I was blind in one eye and I can't see out of the other. And I had rheumatoid arthritis. And so I was like, he has no idea. So once he realizes my story was really going on with me, he's going to just run the other way. As you can see, he did not run away. But our relationship definitely had its challenges. But I knew that George was special from the very first moment. After 2 weeks of dating, I decided to really test him because he was still sticking around. And I was surprised, and I'm like, all right, I got the best way to test this guy to see if he knows what he's doing. I'm going to take my eye out for him. Oh,
what?
So we were sitting on the couch in my family's living room one night, and I said, hey, George, I got to show you something. I mean, he knew, right, George? How much did you know at that time about me? As far as my blindness.
Well, we didn't know in 2 weeks.
But you knew that I couldn't see well. Did you know I had a prosthetic eye at the time? Okay. But knowing it and seeing it are two different things. So my eye, even though I had a prosthetic, I still have my natural eyes. So, but my natural eyes are very small and enticable. They're strong, right? So, and clouded over, so they're kind of white, grayish looking. So anyway, I was just like, I'm okay with taking it out. Let's just see how he responds. So I'm like, okay. So I, put my thumb in the outside edge of my eye. And y'all want me to do it for you? It's not gross. It's not gross. I literally have a normal eye. It's just smaller. So I pop it out for him and I show it to him, and he's like, I remember him just like sitting there looking at me and goes, cool. And I'm like, and now I'm never going to hear from him again because he's just like lying, he's faking, right? No, he didn't, and he kept proving himself to me. We went out, for dinner, our first date night dinner, and my good eye, the badder of the two eyes, I had just had a corneal abrasion, so I couldn't see it all out. It was patched up, and we went out, and I was like, how am I going to go to dinner, and I'm going to know where my food is, my drink is, how am I going to get to the restroom when I can't see anything? And I was so scared because it was our first date night. And George, it was just like, God gave me this perfect angel who knew exactly what to do for me. And we sat there at the table, and he goes, Joy, pulled up the menu, what do you like to eat? And I'm like, okay, this is good. And I told him, and then when the food came, he goes, okay, Joy, your soda's at 12 o'clock, your chicken sandwich is at 6 o'clock, your french fries are at 3 o'clock. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, did he do some research before he came on the thing?
You guys gotta remember, this is before the internet was a thing.
I mean, it was. it a big deal at all, and it just took the pressure and the stress off of me, and he got to hold my hand early because I couldn't see how to walk through. There are some advantages, Okay, but that was just the beginning, and obviously, we fell in love, and I remember one of the things George he told me whenever, we fell in love, and he said he's never seen my blindness or my challenges, my health issues. All you saw was joy.
So let's talk about it from my perspective a little bit. So, what's God really call us to do when we interact with others, right? And I guess it's even more challenging, right? Like I said, we were dating before kind of the internet and Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and all that. And society now has such a big emphasis on how you present yourself and then how the world perceives you, right? And so going into a relationship, you go, really, who am I really with? Because when you live a little bit of life, you realize you're not the same people you are when you get married as we are today. We've changed, we've grown, and we've grown together. And you recognize, well, am I going to judge this on someone's physical beauty or their ability or any of those attributes, or am I going to judge it on how God sees them? What's their heart? What's their spirit? And, at 25, just trying to be kind of in that mode and keep that in mind, right? How does God see her? What's her heart? What's her spirit? And she truly lives up to her name. She's joyous. And an indomitable spirit. Nothing will hold her back or hold her down or any challenge. So that's what I saw. Some in today's society might see, oh, well, she's inspirational, but that seems like a lot of work. But understanding, who she was in God's eyes. And then trying to have that perspective for myself with all the baggage that we have.
So good.
Being human.
So good.
All right.
So, we'll just forward through. We got, after we got engaged, kind of the next challenge of our testing a relationship began. George got a job offer here in Portland. After he asked me to be his wife, guess what he did? He left. He moved away. I'm like, so much for loving me and saying you want to spend the rest of your life with me. Now you take off. And I was a little, upset in the moment that he was leaving and going away. I was in college. Granted, I was not ready to get married at the time when we got engaged.
But I took Beyonce's advice. I put a ring on it.
That was a new one. From him. He moved away, and I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my studies. We're going to somehow manage this long-distance relationship. I knew that George was mine, and it's another thing about trusting God and putting just God first in our relationship. And if George really felt in his heart that this is where God was leading him, and I wasn't ready to be his wife yet. I was in school and doing a lot of things. So it was just like, okay, well, God, I'm just going to trust you that you're going to help me understand, and you're going to bring all of this together in His time. But that's easier said than done, We did a long-distance engagement for a year and a half. A year and a half. A long time. We went we only saw each other probably 4 times over that year and a half. We went, 2 different times, 4 months without seeing each other. Maybe we saw each other 3 times. It was not very many times.
Save for a wedding.
We saved for a wedding. We were poor. We were, of course, then we were just trying to also, my parents were having a very difficult time too with, knowing that I was going to get married and move to Portland. Mm-hmm. This is another part of our journey. It's just challenging. You have a sick child, right? My parents had taken care of me and my health conditions all my life. I've had my eye disease. They call it my blindness since the age of 3. 7 eye surgeries, gone through so many treatments with the eyes and with joint pain all my life. And then you're going to have to turn your child over. Can you imagine as a parent, turning your child over into some other person's hands to be responsible for your child? Yeah, I wasn't a child anymore, but I was the I'd lived at home until the day of my wedding. And that was quite scary for my parents, even though they trusted God and all this. Trusting God and the reality of, your child being so far away from home and you can't be there to help them when they're sick. And so that's hard. And they weren't on board at first when we got engaged, as far as with me moving away and
Getting engaged.
I was the first of my two other sisters to get engaged, and we all had lived at home, very close family. So that made it really difficult, to say the least, I guess. And then I was just praying and praying for God to just give my parents that peace, that this was a good thing, and that somehow God was going to work it all out. And one day my parents came to Georgia to me and they said that we just have been praying and we know that you guys need to be married and we give you our blessing. That's what I was waiting for. I wasn't about to go against my parents. I love them so much. And when they said that, I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so excited. We planned our wedding in 4 months. And we were married in July 29th, 2000. And the day after the wedding, I moved to Portland to be with George. So he came to Fort Worth, married me, and then there was no honeymoon. Not like a traditional honeymoon.
Remember that part where we were born?
We were born. And George will tell you the first couple of weeks we're going through all the wedding envelopes and pulling out all the cash. Like, yes.
The first Sunday we were married, we were in the dome.
Yeah, we were here.
Yeah.
Met Pastor Frank the summer we got married in July. That just like a month before, I met Pastor Frank in Fort Worth, Texas, at a worship conference, and he was speaking there. And my dad is like, "Boy, this pastor is from Portland, and it's a great church there. We got to get you to meet him." And so when we met Pastor Frank, he was so precious. He gave me a hug, gave me his book. He wrote his cell phone number, his phone number. He's like, "Joy, I will be your daddy away from home." Just instantly fell in love with Pastor Frank, and he's like, I would love for you and George to come visit after you get married. So that's what we did. We were here the Sunday after we were married, and then we met that same day Mark Estes, Pastor Mark. He
On his day off.
On his day off, George and I were standing just, in the audience and worshiping, and here comes this guy. He says, excuse me, I've never seen you guys here before. And we might have stood out because, we were dressed, I don't know, maybe stood.
We wore Texas church clothes.
Yeah. we were all dressed up.
And this was older, City Bible, and Mark had hair.
Yeah. Everyone dressed up. But he's like, y'all are new, I think y'all look new. And God just really put on my heart. I saw you in the audience, and God just put on my heart to come over and pray for you. And we're like, well, we just got married last week, and this is our first Sunday here. And that moment, we just connected with Mark, and he introduced us to Susan, and then their girls and their family, and then we became part of their family from that moment, and they are like our family here. And so after we were married, about a year and a after we were married, we decided, okay, where do you want to go from there?
So there's the story side, but let's talk about kind of perspectives, right? So she likes to kind of tell the narrative, and I'll like to kind of talk about perspective. So that's from her perspective, but imagine everyone around us at the time of going through our dating, engagement, marriage, and then imagine, so she has a disability, and imagine what everyone else is saying around you, your friends, my parents, her parents, right? And so we'll talk about some of those perspectives really quickly. So, let's start with, like, my parents. Do you know what you're getting yourself into? Are you really sure you want to do this? She seems lovely, but...
And they didn't live around us, so they didn't get to meet me in person earlier.
What are your friends going to say? Man, you going to take that on? I mean, she's hot and everything, but come on.
You're going to have to be the chauffeur, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. And then, Joy's parents. How can you take care of her better than we have? How can you do the same? She's our child. There's some stranger. Right? So think about like entering into kind of a relationship and understand what we have to do as remember that becoming what we're talking about, right? To understand who we were, not just who she was and who I was, but who we were and where our strength came from, and then how we were meant to be together in the midst of all that noise. And it was less because imagine in the world where social media has, and you're going to have everyone commenting on those type of things, and just have that assurance for ourselves. So yes, it's there's a narrative. Yes, it's a little love story, but imagine it in the minute in those circumstances. And kind of it's great advice to understand. There's what the world is saying, and now social media is magnifying what the world is saying. But in the midst of that, what's God saying to you as a couple?
Right.
And you, what I mean, just you as a unit. What does He really want for your life? And sometimes things are really contrary to what the world says you should do, because we did everything that we're not supposed to. So what do I do? Well, she's blind, and you're taking on a lifelong obligation, and you shouldn't be doing that, right? The day you're getting married, you're taking her away from her family and her support group into a completely new environment where she knows nothing.
No one.
You shouldn't do that. Right? So a lot of times our story is this thing of what the world's expectations are, or what you would expect to happen, versus where we were with our faith and our walk with the Lord, where He wanted us to go. And understanding sometimes those things, a lot of times those things are conflict.
Yeah.
And understanding where we're taking direction and what's wrong.
So good.
Yeah, you can go.
So, I was excited to, after we did get, married and moved to Portland, but like he was saying, it's scary. We didn't know, I didn't know anyone there. Of course we got connected here at City Bible, like I said, and we were meeting people, but we lived, we lived over in Hillsborough, so clear on the other side of Portland, where we had no friends over there. I was enrolled in college there. I was forcing myself to become independent, because you got to imagine, for me, I had lived at home all my life. I had had my parents, my sisters, people to drive me around, people to go shopping with me, I did go to school and they dropped me off, and went to classes, but if I ever did anything outside of class, I was with my sisters or my parents, someone, And now I'm in a new world. George is at work. I'm at home alone. And I'm like, I've got to get out and live a life. And how do I do that with my little limited vision? I had some cane skill travel mobility training in my high school years, but because the vision the sight I had at that time, I didn't. And this is a time in my life too where I wasn't coming to terms. So I still wasn't completely okay with my blindness. I was still fighting my loss of sight and trying to fit into the sighted world, which I didn't quite fit into. And I didn't want to be looked at as different, and having a cane and if I used the cane, then I felt like I failed it's just hard. I was trying to be independent without, I guess, the cane, and then I realized on my own I had to use a cane, and I had to get training. So I went through all of that. I remember the first time, though, after I got the training in Portland, was learning how to navigate the buses, cross intersections, go to stores, all this stuff on my own. I remember the first time I went to the grocery store by myself. I was like, I'm in the store alone, shopping. I called George and myself. I'm like, guess where I am? And I remember this, and he's like, what? And I'm like, I'm shopping. I'm grocery shopping. I mean, the little things that I was 23 years old. You would think by that point you've done stuff like that, but I hadn't, And I was never pushed out of my comfort zone. And I really do believe that this is like the whole taking a step of faith. With George moving to Portland during our relationship, our engagement, moving to Portland after we were married, these are God's pushing both of us out of our comfort zone, and especially me, to get me to where I am today. If I hadn't been pushed out of my comfort zone, sometimes it's not, you don't want to move. You don't want to have to go step out and do something that you're not really confident in, but sometimes God wants you to, and the only way He can get you to do that is to put you in a situation where you have no choice. And so I become independent, going to college on my own. Well, as I was gaining my independence and my freedom, and it was exciting, I was discovering joy, like who joy is outside of my family, my parents and my sister. And I was like, oh, people don't know me as Joy. I was Joy Rouse. I didn't go far, went from Rouse to Ross. I'm like, oh, people don't know me here as Joy Rouse. My family my dad, our family knows everyone in the South, and in the South, so everyone knows the Rouse family, but no one knows Joy Ross. I was like, this is different. So I'm Joy Ross now. Okay. So as I'm figuring this world out and finding a name for myself, my name, and who I am, I started to suffer a lot of arthritic pain.
I'm gonna do one little thing. So she talked about the independence thing. So she literally called me crying from Sherry's.
Oh yeah.
Because it's the first time she had gone to a restaurant. Restaurant by herself, of all places. Sherry's. Imagine how weird that looked.
I had got out of school that day, and I was out of school. I took the bus instead of going home on the public bus. I'm like, I've never gone to a restaurant like this. I'm like, let's go to Sherry's. So I went to the Seth's booth by myself. I'm like, okay, this is really weird, but it's so exciting. So yeah, I called George. Just one of those other phone calls. It's just I was finding my independence, and it was nice. Anything else you want to say? I'm going on to talk about my arthritis, so is that good?
No, before you get there. So also one thing that I did in that course of her finding that, so where her parents, and this is, they want to serve and take care of her kid. I'm a very different person than her parents. So she wanted to do something, I go, all right, go do it.
George has never, he loves me and he wants to keep me safe, but he's not going to coddle me, or he's not going to say, oh no, Joy, how are you going to cross that intersection? And what if he had a lot of faith in.
Yeah, so, and just understand that, right? I don't know if any of you have been over to Hillsborough and the intersection at
85th.
Yeah, that's like that thing that's 8 lanes. Should they get across that thing? Right, this is my blind new bride. I'm like, yeah, if you want to get there, get
I
out.
would literally call him. I would call him before I would cross the intersection. I'd be like, okay, say a prayer for me.
But you understand, so the faith that it took on both parts, because it would have been easy for me to enable in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right, say no.
George has always been my cheerleader, my biggest cheerleader. And my parents have always been my cheerleader too. Of course, growing up, I couldn't be where I am now without them. They gave me that faith to believe that I could do all that I want, all I want to do, and don't listen to society. And then God gave me George, who continued on that with just encouraging me and cheering me on. And the next part of our life became so challenging. I was in school. My arthritis began really flaring up so severely, so more than I've ever experienced in my whole life. My hands were so swollen. I had to get my wedding ring cut off. I couldn't open and close my hands. They were just so swollen. I'd wake up in the morning and my hands in fists. And then it was not just my hands, then it became almost every joint in my body. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't walk. I had to drop out of college because I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't even get to the bus stop. So it was so extremely difficult for me. George had to stay home a lot of days from work and help me. He'd wake me up in the mornings and run my hands under hot and cold water, massage them. I had to have my mom come up and stay with me for a time to help me, and it was a really hard time of our marriage. We had just been married within a year, and all of this was going on. And of course, from my parents' perspective, now my daughter's so far away, and we can't be there to help. And George stepped up, and then I got placed on a waiting list for a new medication that was coming out in the market called Enbrel, and it's a biological drug that's injectable, subcutaneous injectable. And so finally, after waiting for 3 months, they called me in and they said, okay, because they were just mass producing this medication, they didn't have enough. So they called me in to get my first injection. I was so excited to try this drug. It was literally a miracle drug for me. George had to begin giving me these injections in my stomach twice a week.
And I hate needles, capital H.
Talk about love, love and when you have to do, you do what you have to do sometimes. And so George began giving me these injections, and instantly this medication started to help my joint pain. Well, doctors had told me that you cannot get pregnant on this drug. We don't have enough tests, testing, studies, done on pregnant women to know how the effect of this medication is going to have on babies. So you can't get pregnant. No problem. We weren't interested yet in getting pregnant. Well, about a couple months into the shot, me taking my treatment, I started to get sick. I was getting nauseous, and there's other symptoms. I told my mom, I just don't feel good. I think it might be this medication. I don't know. Now I don't know. Out of the blue, I'm starting to get sick. And she's like, Joy, you might be pregnant. I said, no, there's no way. We can't get pregnant on this drug. No, we're not. We're trying not to get pregnant and all this kind of stuff. So she's like, Joy, you have to go take a pregnancy. I'm like, because anytime I would smell food, it would make me sick. And I'm like, okay, we lived across the street from a Kaiser Permanente. So I walked, and we had Kaiser insurance, so I walked across the street one day, went into the lab, peed in a cup, and they said, okay, come back in 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, no problem. I'm just going to get this test result so I can tell my mom she's wrong. And I come back, go up to the counter, they hand me a piece of paper, and they say, congratulations. And I said, for what? They're like, you're pregnant. I go, oh, no, you must have me mixed up with something. Because I couldn't see the paper, And I'm like, oh, no, you must have me mixed up with somebody else. They're like, Joy Ross? I'm like, yeah. They're like, congratulations, you're pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh, this fear came over me. I remember standing there, I can so remember, we're pregnant. And I was waiting to hear how he was going to respond. Not like, I was afraid he was going to be like, oh no, and he goes, yay. And he's like, that's awesome. And I'm like, you're not afraid? And he's like, it's good, it's going to be fine. It's going to be good, Joy. I remember him being reassuring, Joy, no worries. God got it, we're good, this is going to be awesome. And just excited, and I needed to hear that. And in that moment too, this peace came over me, that God just spoke to my heart, Joy, I'm taking care of your baby. This is a good thing. Just trust me. So the world looking at me going, you're so sick, you have all these things going on with you in your life, and now you're going to throw a pregnancy onto it, in the mix, and oh my gosh, you know what you guys are going to do? How are you going to handle this? How are you going to get through? You have no family around, blah, 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 blah. And it was just negativity and just, oh my gosh, it was so horrible. And you want to go on from there?
Yeah, again, it's just that story of contrast, right? Where she'd been immobilized, we're only been married, just a little over a year and a half at that point. She was on a brand new drug that no one knew the long-term impact of. My family lived in New York at the time. Her aligned with God. Where's our peace and where does our strength come from? In the midst of what, kind of just, the analogy of the storm, right? And that storm is criticism or other people's opinions. And, where do we find our peace in the midst of that? So, and my responsibility in that is to be her supporter, right? To be her anchor, to be her rock in that point where you got to imagine, and this is where, in that becoming part, how do I serve her in that moment of vulnerability and stress and all the emotions she's going through?
Yeah, and the blessing in this pregnancy, though, my arthritis went into remission by the 4th month of my pregnancy. I had a beautiful pregnancy, delivered a perfectly healthy baby girl, Isabella, and even though it went into remission, unfortunately my arthritis came back. My eyes flared up with the inflammation. So the arthritis had gone to my eyes when I was 3. I didn't explain that earlier. And the inflammation, instead of just damaging joints, it also can affect the eyes and so much going on in my body. So what did we do? We got pregnant again. Something with pregnancy hormones, it helps the arthritis. It can cause it to go into remission. So doctors say you should just stay pregnant. No, how about you guys just figure out a way to bottle up the pregnancy hormones? There you go. That's what it came to me. All right? And navigating the world, with two babies, with the very limited eyesight, with joint pain, that was challenging. How are you going to take care of your babies when you can't see? How are you going to know when they're sick? How are you going to see when they're crawling around, they're picking up stuff that you can't see, and they're putting it in their mouth? And it's like, there was no Facebook blind mom groups. There was no parenting websites that I could go to for blind parents that I could draw, advice from. I knew no other blind parents. So I was figuring this out on my own. And of course with George. And George was awesome. Like, George came up with these great techniques, how he was going to administer medication to the babies. And when I couldn't see him, I could see a mark on a syringe, a black marker. Then I could see like the red liquid. So he would cut niches like with a knife, like on the syringes and stuff like that. So I could feel things. So we got just really
arts and crafty.
Really creative. When it came to changing diapers, I just used a ton of baby wipes. And I don't know, we figured it out, we just figured out our life. And it became our normal. And, the next journey of our life, where we're going to pick up on Tuesday, you hear all this stuff we've been chatting about today and how
That's the easy stuff.
That's the easy stuff. What we're going to talk about on Tuesday is really...
It gets worse.
But better. Worse, but better. Definitely the step of faith. We had to walk it out. Because, I lost my complete eyesight in 2008. And from that moment on, our girls were both diagnosed with arthritis as well.
We'll cover all that. But so, looking at the clock, this is a great time
Questions?
for Q&A.
And we are open to any kind of questions.
I feel like it's out of bounds. So.
And we love questions. So, anybody?
I have a question for George. When you were dating Joy, and obviously she's popping her eye out and showing it to you. I think that most people in that situation would look at their future with quite a bit of fear and apprehension. And I'm wondering if you had a couple of things in your life that kind of prepared you for that moment, but how did you feel those things, or did you feel like you kind of came into it like, hey, I'm here to serve, but I don't need to do great?
It's a great and challenging question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think still at 25, males are still idiots.
He wasn't, no. He was so
There's a bit of like, yeah, I can do it. I can do it, right? A little bit of vulnerability.
This is a challenge.
It's a challenge, but I can handle it. So I'm gonna admit that probably there's a little bit of that, but there's also a lot of centered in who you are, right? So if there's any insecurity of who you are, and then how you can process and deal with something. My mom makes a joke that I was born 30. It's only gone from there. And you look at God's big plan, like, well, all right, I'm pretty serious when I goof off a little bit, but generally relatively serious person, and at 25 had a really good sense of who I was. So all of those things, so I think when you encounter challenges, the biggest hurdle in encountering challenges is overcoming yourself in the sense of your own insecurities, your own fears, your own doubts about what your capabilities are, what your capacity is. So I think to answer your question is, to deal with any circumstances like in life is, you first got to know who you are and who you are in Christ. And once that foundation is there, everything else is like pretty manageable. I also, have a kind of a life perspective of like, it drives her nuts sometimes. Like, that's a tomorrow problem.
George has just always been like that.
Right? That's a tomorrow problem. And so I always look at things this way. God, you are sufficient for today. Right? You pray and says, you know what, let's just get through today. That's the tomorrow thing.
George has his way of just being able to, just prioritize things, and I needed that. I needed that kind of man in my life who can just look at the situation and go, all right, that's nothing I'm going to worry about today. We'll worry with it later. Just focus on right now. And
I guess to elaborate on that, it's a perspective, right? Of like, God, you are sufficient for today. And that's the prayer. Get up. Let's get through today.
And he knew he loved me. I was worth all the fear, right? I was worth fighting for.
After 18 years of marriage, so it's the because you can drive yourself nuts. Like literally, I sat and thought about everything that could happen. Right? You probably have to put me in a straitjacket. But then having that perspective of God, you're sufficient for today. Right? It's just worry about today, we'll get reset, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
I mean, no one
and
knows.
Understanding that perspective.
And no one knows your future, You enter into a relationship with anyone. No one knows what tomorrow holds. I mean, you have to be, you have to have that understanding, to go like, if anything were to happen, am I in this for life? Am I in it conditionally? You have to just know how, I love this person regardless of what happens, and I'm just going to walk this out with this person and trust God, Whatever happens, God is going to give me the strength and the ability for both of us to get through.
And I'm sure you've covered it before in your class. Marriage is not a commitment you make once at the altar. Right? Marriage is a commitment that you make each and every day. And so it's, marriage is getting in trouble when people forget that.
That's right.
So, all right. Any more
Any other
questions?
ones?
This isn't quite as big of like a really in-depth question, but
We'll
something.
take the little stuff too. Sometimes.
I think something, I don't know, in a girl's mind would be the perspective of, like, do you do her makeup every morning?
No.
Okay, I was like,
We didn't talk about this earlier. Sometimes we cover this. Well, in our first part of when he said he was going to move to Portland, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to come see you. And back then, I had my sisters and my mom do my makeup for me. I mean, I could do like lipstick. Well, he did my eyeshadow today. I did basic eyeshadow, and I do my eyeliner and mascara on my own. But he touches my eye. He just makes them look extra special. But when we were, so he was going to Portland. I'm like, okay, so since my mom and my sisters do basically everything, when I come see you, I'm not going to not wear my makeup. Like, you're going to have to figure this out. So you're going to have to learn how to help me do my makeup, baby. And George is like, okay. So my sisters sat him down, and they did one eye or one part of my face, and he would do the other. George has an art background, so this becomes very natural for him.
So I have a fine arts background, so brushes and that kind of stuff is not a big thing. So the funny story on that, when we first got married, took her to Nordstrom to buy some makeup. After we were
Because I think about I shared my makeup with my mom and my sisters.
After we were done being poor, we took her to Chanel.
He got a better job.
And I got offered part-time work at the Chanel counter.
They're like, this is so cute. So, like I said, this is before the internet, all the makeup gurus out there on YouTube. So, he takes me to Barnes and Nobles, and there's this Making Faces book. It's a makeup book, and it has all these different makeup techniques and looks. And he goes to buy this book, and we're looking in Barnes and Nobles at all these different looks and what kind of looks do I want to achieve. He was doing this with me. I'm like, so cute. And the funny thing is, so I used to have, like I said, some eyesight. Do you know now, without any eyesight, over the past 10 years, I have learned to do my own makeup almost as good as what my eyes look today, because like I said, he just touched them up a little bit. I do everything. I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone to do more with no sight. I see nothing at all, of course. And I do more now than I ever did when I once had some usable vision. Wow. Isn't that phenomenal? Yeah. But yes, but George, he can do my false eyelashes for special occasions. He's my guy. Back when he used to live, he worked in downtown Portland on Broadway, I would come downtown I'll take the Max and my girls. I come down to go to his office before I go shopping at Pioneer Place Mall, and I come see him, and this is back when I had some low eyesight, and I needed him for a lot of my eye makeup. So I came to him, and I'm like, honey, can you do my makeup? So right there in his office, and he was a CTO of this company there, and the glass walls, right, everyone can see in. Here's my husband standing there at his desk with the brush, and he's doing my eyes in front of all the men, all the employees.
So we have time for one last question. Well, it's not going to ring out at the right time, but anyway. Any other
questions? Yeah, so because you guys have multiple layers of what's going on when you guys were first meeting and like questions, like there's a lot of questions for even just like people who aren't disabled, like am I choosing the right person? And is this going to be working for me? And so I'm sure like with Joy, there's probably a lot of fear, like is this man going to be able to take care of me? Do I need to work well? So how does that kind of like work into
My fears?
Yeah, because
I just knew George was the most exceptional man. Like, I just knew instantly that this guy, I wasn't going to have a lot of fears with him because he put all my fears to rest with the way he treated me, the way he just assured me. Like, I just had confidence in him, and I just trusted God. And I've been praying for George all my life, and when I met him and I started to fall in love, I'm like, with all these little things he was doing so perfect, like, he wasn't perfect, but all the things he was doing so well, I'm
I'll
like,
get there about time, maybe 7.
he just put all my fears aside, and I just knew that he was the one for me. So I don't know. I had peace, and that's kind of one of those things you just know. You know. Can't wait though to come back Tuesday and
Class dismissed.
share with our